Michael Brooks. And joining us now is Dave Zirin. He's the sports editor of The Nation magazine and the author of the new book, Game Over. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And also Matt Binder on the line as well.
Thanks for joining us, Dave.
So,
Oh,
Dave,
man, happy to be here.
So basically, definitely wanted to talk to you about this news. Jason Collins coming out, this veteran NBA player, kind of coming out of the closet yesterday has been really significant news, obviously in sports, but more broadly across kind of American culture and politics. And I'm actually just wondering right off the bat, can you give a sense of who this guy is, what his career in the NBA has been, and just sort of like where he's coming from? He's kind of a journeyman, not like a frontline star.
No, absolutely. Jason Collins, he's 34 years old. He's played for 6 NBA teams. He is what's considered to be a pro's pro, a top role player in the NBA for his most of his entire career. He's somebody who has started twice in the NBA Finals when he played for the New Jersey Nets. He's somebody who really did lead the Stanford Cardinal to the Final Four back in 2002 when he played there with his twin brother, Zirin. And Jason Collins is one of those guys who you might not notice if you're an NBA fan. You really just might not. A 7-foot, 260-pound banger who once led the NBA in fouls for one season. But the thing about the NBA, and I've been thinking about this a lot, is that it's the league where we feel the closest relationship to the players. Maybe it's because they wear such few clothes on the court. Maybe it's because we're so close to the action. Right. But, for example, the NFL's equivalent to Jason Collins would be somebody anonymous to most fans. And yet, as soon as Jason Collins made his announcement, everybody knew who he was and why this was important.
Right. No, that's really interesting in terms of, and I think that he was so kind of just really articulate and vulnerable and unexpected in terms of kind of describing this process of coming out and what it was like, really hiding his identity while being, a guy who's in the spotlight in a certain way. And it was really striking. Now, you've been saying for a long time in your writing and in interviews and other outlets that you've been predicting that this would come sooner or later. Someone would sort of step out of the closet in professional sports. Now, did it still come, it actually happening, did it still kind of hit you as a shock, even though you'd been expecting it?
Let me tell you, it's like one of the most hilarious reactions to this were people on the right wing who didn't want to look homophobic. So instead they just said, well, it's not really that big a deal. Who cares?
Right.
Well, people who care are people who've been fighting to make sports more inclusive. People who care are LGBT athletes, LGBT people, and straight supporters who've been trying to make sure that sports is not this last sort of citadel of homophobia and that's widely accepted in U.S. society. So it's a huge deal. It's an incredible deal. And it hit me because, honestly, for the last 2 years, I've felt a little bit like a broken clock. And, of course, broken clocks are right twice a day, but it just seemed like the longest 12-hour period in human history. Because for the last couple of years, I've said that, probably since starting at about 2010, I've said that an active male athlete will happen in months, if not weeks.
Right.
And I've been saying that for about 2.5 years. Now, my reasons for saying it were not pulled out of thin air. It came from real conversations with real athletes.
We've been obviously getting hacked by some, maybe that homophobic writer at ESPN or something. People who don't want this conversation.
Oh, they have none of those at ESPN. I don't know what you're talking about.
But actually, so Dave, what we were just getting into was talking again about this notion that this has been something you've been predicting for a while, but then at the same time, when it actually happened, it was a shock. I want you to finish your thought on that, and then also, do you think that now that this is like the first drop, and we're going to see a wave of people in sports kind of claiming their identity?
Well, it's just when it finally happened, it was just the wow factor was just really huge. because I kept waiting for it. I had a sort of like names in my head of who it would be. Jason Collins was not among those names.
Wow.
You could put me in the category with his twin brother, Zirin, who had no idea that his brother was gay. So,
Wow.
I mean, he was pretty deep in the closet for his 33 years. Although it was fascinating to read in the article that for the last several years, the reason why he wore number 98 was as a nod to Matthew Shepard, the young gay man who was killed brutally in 1998.
Yeah.
As well as that was the year the Trevor Project started. So he was sending very, very subtle signals over the last couple of years. But it was something that it was a joyous moment. It was a celebratory moment. It was a moment where we could finally say, wow, we no longer have to say no out male athlete has ever existed in North American men's sports. And now we don't have to say that anymore. And that in and of itself is a big relief.
Well, we can also speculate that probably Phil Jackson has actually met Jason Collins, so it's news for him as well.
Mm.
Yeah. So, and I also think though it was interesting in the Jason Collins profile and piece where he came out. Another significant thing he mentioned was a tipping point for him knowing that the Supreme Court was, holding court. He plays for the Washington Wizards, we should note. So he's in the same city where the Supreme Court is contemplating essentially his fate to be himself as a human being on the most basic level. And that was a very important part in the tipping point of him kind of coming out and speaking publicly. You've obviously are someone who's looked in a really wide lens at kind of figures in sports having the ability to speak out in terms of their identity, in terms of political or economic or cultural issues versus being kind of determined, by team owners or brands or other kind of prerogatives that will sort of maybe hold some of their ideas and freedom of expression in check. So do you think that connected with obviously this kind of reversal of homophobia and the significance of that, does this open a broader door for athletes to kind of re-engage politically or, across a number of platforms and areas that they may want to speak out on?
Well, I mean, I've been making this is what actually my book's about. It's Game Over: How
Right.
Politics Has Turned the Sports World Upside Down. It's about how I think in the last 5 years we have seen a re-engagement, and one of those issues has been on LGBT issues. I mean, Jason Collins did something incredibly brave, but one of the reasons that he's even able to do it is because other straight athletes in recent years have done just what you described,
Right.
stepped up and re-engaged, particularly on this issue. Straight football players like Brendan Ayanbadejo, Scott Fajitas, Chris Cluey
Yep.
actually took on activist roles in the last election campaign in fighting around referendums on marriage equalities in their states. Scott Fajita was an endorser of the 2009 National Equality March, which had 200,000 people show up to it. Brendan Ayanbadejo has talked about there being 4 NFL players who are looking to have a press conference and come out jointly. So, and this is something Jason Collins is well aware of, is that there has definitely been some groundwork put down here that's allowed him much more oxygen and space and confidence to be able to step up and step forward. But as you implied, it's not just LGBT issues by any stretch. I think that the deeper comfort with social media on behalf of athletes, which allows them to get around what a lot of them perceive to be a hostile sports media, as well as them just recognizing their own cultural capital, has meant that more athletes have felt like, hey, I have this platform, I might as well use it for something.
Yeah, it's almost like the de-Jordanization of professional sports to a degree. And I just have actually kind of...
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, in a weird way, there's continuity with Jordan.
Huh, okay.
Because the legacy of Michael Jordan is it's better to be a brand than a man.
Right.
And today a lot...
I almost feel like during this interview is sort of like we're kind of, along with Dave, we're like Muhammad Ali in Zaire. and the phone lines are like George Foreman, and they're just pounding on us. But we're staying strong, and we're going to take this to fruition.
Yeah, I should probably tell, just so everybody knows, because you guys are calling me from there. I live in Maryland, where we're one of the last places that has above-ground telephone lines.
Oh.
I mean, most places these days, they either go fiber optic or go below ground, and there's a massive thunderstorm happening here.
Oh, so that could be it. Okay.
So, wow, it might actually not be our fault.
So,
it might actually not be our fault. That's funny. No, so take it and just
take it back to Jordan here.
Yeah, we're taking it back to Jordan.
To see the furthering of their brand.
Yeah.
These days, in the 21st century, in these much more complicated political times than when Jordan played in the 90s, as actually having something to say, having an opinion, being a human being, instead of just a brand. That, in a weird way, is an inverse form of branding.
Right, absolutely.
And I think that's a reflection of our political times, and it's nothing that we should be afraid of or shun or think is a bad thing. I think it's actually really positive.
Absolutely.
What would you, I mean, we speaking of Jordan, and then before we were speaking about how Jason Collins has had this long career through various teams. He's not like a big superstar, but he's known in the game because he's a veteran and he's a strong player. But he's not like one of those breakout stars. So what would you say to these? One of the things we saw yesterday was people just throwing around his stats and saying like Jason Collins, who cares? No one even spoke of his name in the mainstream until this. Why should a normal, regular NBA player who isn't Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, why should we care that one of those players came out as a gay man?
Well, I mean, I think it's history.
Yeah.
And history is about making history. It's about doing something that nobody has ever done before. And if that has to be Jason Collins, then so be it. It'll be Jason Collins. I mean, we could always construct in our mind who the perfect player would be, but it doesn't always happen like that. I mean, it happens because of qualities that maybe aren't about how good you play on the field or on the court. But they're about character and bravery and courage, or just being fed up with a right-wing Supreme Court that's trying to talk about you and treat you like you're 3/5 of a human being. So that's the way sometimes history happens. And once again, it's like we got to embrace history and all its messiness.
It is just amazing how those basketball stats were being thrown out as if that's supposed to undermine what he did yesterday. It's just, that to me was just almost as offensive as the slurs being thrown around, actually.
Well, it's one of the two ways that you deal with it. I mean, one way is explicit homophobia, which
right.
I think a lot of people on the right are actually scared to traffic in these days, which, if you think about it, is a massive shift from 2004 when George W. Bush won re-election by putting all his chips in the middle of the table with homophobia.
Absolutely.
And putting those anti-marriage amendments in all the battleground states. And now, look what happened in 2012. Tammy Baldwin, first lesbian senator, and her opponent, Tommy Thompson, actually fired a staffer for putting out a leaflet that was homophobic, or that implied that she was some sort of sexual libertine who shouldn't be trusted. And so the times have changed. The wheel has turned. Smart people on the right get that. But then they have to figure out another way to prune the message. And one way you do that is, if you can't blast Jason Collins for his sexuality, you blast him for, well, it's not really that big a deal. You just try to take the air out of the message. But you know what? It really didn't work. Because even if you don't think Jason Collins is a big deal, the fact that two presidents, Kobe Bryant and The Rock, all stepped forward the same day to say something in favor of Jason Collins is a big deal.
Yeah, no, I wanted to I thought if you could elaborate on it a little bit more, because I thought that was astonishing to me, because the reaction was just a total distillation of the shift you're talking about. I'm not in any way questioning the sincerity of people like Kobe Bryant or Bill Clinton or Barack Obama. Actually, the responses were great. But watching the cultural shift of a president who, for whatever reason signed, DOMA into law into 1996, now turning around to go out of his way to say I'm a personal friend of this guy and I'm proud of him. It really showed that being on the homophobic side, that's what's marginal.
Yeah, and that's what's marginal. And because that's what's marginal, it also creates a kind of a panic. So when you have Chris Broussard on ESPN go on his homophobic rant about Jason Collins sinning against God and all the rest of it, the reaction on the right, like, it was unbelievable. Like, all I did was tweet out. That was how it started. Like, I tweeted out his comments and just said, "Wow, well, here it is." And I got this flooded with tweets about, "You're so intolerant. What about free speech? Why are you trying to get him fired?" Da, 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 da. And it was just like, you could feel the panic.
Yep.
You could feel the marginalization. You could feel people who are saying, "We are so comfortable with our prejudices and our bigotries. How dare you in any way criticize, our avatar of those bigotries on this day?" And I really thought that entire episode was a very crude effort by ESPN just to get a piece of this story.
So you think that ESPN was just trying to basically we should just say kind of then we're going to sort of shift gears a little bit. But I think this is important.
Chris Broussard has never been shy about his feelings on the subject. There's record of him talking about it in the past. He sits on the board of an organization that's one of those, like, deeply Christianist, anti-gay organizations. This is not about Christianity, and it's frankly given that Jason Collins considers himself a Christian, it's deeply offensive to say, well, this is about Christianity and Christians' right to believe what they want to believe. No, this is about a right-wing edge of evangelical Christianity.
That's
Chris Broussard stands with. It's a political position. It's not a religious position. People who say it's a religious position are just giving him cover for what is a political operation. And what bothers me is that I feel like ESPN got caught flat-footed on this story.
Right.
They were embarrassed because Sports Illustrated got the scoop. They were embarrassed because they were mocked all morning because their lead story was Tim Tebow, and no one gives a crap about Tim Tebow.
This is true.
And they said, okay, how do we get a piece of this story? Well, let's find our house homophobe and put him on.